The fedora, the scar, the Valentine's Day massacre. Al Capone, his name is etched into history as the King of Chicago, the untouchable crime boss who ruled an empire of bootleg liquor and blood. A beat of silence. But what happens to an empire when the emperor falls? Al Capone walking into court, prison bars closing, a quiet suburban house in the 1950s. The movies end with his conviction, but the real story was just beginning. This is the story they didn't film. This is about what was left behind. What happened to the vast, powerful Chicago outfit without its brutal CEO? And more intimately, what became of his family? The mother who prayed for him, the brother nicknamed Bottles, the son who inherited nothing but an infamous name and a devastating disease. Did they flee? Did they flourish in the shadows? Or did the Capone curse follow them for generations? Today, we're moving beyond the myth of the man to uncover the fate of the family, from a brother who joined the circus, to a mother's quiet devotion, to a son who desperately tried to disappear. This is the haunting human aftermath of America's most notorious criminal dynasty. But before we begin, like and subscribe. Al Capone stands as an iconic name in the annals of organized crime. Yet, film portrayals often omit the fate of his criminal operation and his actual relatives once he was behind bars. Did the criminal enterprise maintain its structure? Did his family attempt to profit from his infamous reputation? Or were they also brought down by the law? Today, we're exploring in detail the events that unfolded immediately following Capone's imprisonment. The Chicago outfit was established in the 1910s, but it gained its true infamy under Al Capone's control. The groundwork for Capone's ascent to the pinnacle of the criminal world was laid in 1920, when mobster Johnny Torrio brought him from New York to Chicago. Leading the outfit from 1925 to 1931, Capone was engaged in many illegal ventures well before he assumed command. Even after his 1931 imprisonment, he might have retained some awareness of the outfit's operations. However, his mental decline from syphilis was so advanced that the one-time gang leader was granted an early release. From 1939 until 1947, Al Capone resided in Florida, where he ultimately died on January 25, 1947. He was survived by his son, his wife, his mother, and many brothers and sisters. So who assumed control of the Chicago outfit? And what became of Al Capone's family? Gabrielle and Teresa Capone came to the United States from Naples, Italy in the mid-1890s. Already having two sons, the Capones were anticipating their third child when they made their home in New York City. The family grew to include a daughter and several more boys before Gabrielle's death from a heart attack in 1920. Al departed for Chicago shortly afterward. Teresa and the remainder of his family, however, stayed in New York, except for his brother James, who quite literally ran off to join the circus. Which is more dangerous, the mafia or the circus? Interesting question. Al Capone is said to have phoned his mother frequently and supported her financially from a distance. Teresa, in turn, was deeply committed to her children and grandchildren, even raising the son of her boy, Ralph, after the child was essentially left by his parents. Teresa later relocated to Chicago, living in a home Al bought for her. While little is documented about her daily life, she continued to live there until her passing in 1952. Three of the four Capone brothers entered the world of organized crime: Ralph, Al, and Frank. Ralph Capone wed in 1915 and had one son, Ralphie, with his wife Philomena, sometimes called Florence. After Florence left the boy, he was brought up by Ralph's mother. Ralph moved from New York to Chicago in 1920, finalizing a divorce soon after. During Prohibition, he took charge of the Chicago outfit's bottling operation with the explicit and practical duty of dominating the market for soft drinks. This earned him the moniker Bottles. During the early 1930s, Ralph successfully controlled beverage sales in Chicago, turning into the primary supplier for the 1933 World's Fair. When Al was finally sent to prison, Ralph was overseeing the Chicago outfit and likewise faced tax evasion charges. Indicted in 1930, he served time in Leavenworth Penitentiary. The full scope of Ralph's power in criminal associations after Al's death is uncertain, though a U.S. Senate committee report on organized crime noted that Ralph held significant political sway in Lyons, Illinois at a minimum. He stayed affluent until his death in 1974, spending his final years in Mercer, Wisconsin, where he is believed to have owned a bar. Within the Mercer community, Ralph was viewed as reputable, popular, and eager to assist his neighbors. Aside from the whole criminal empire business, he seems like a decent fellow. Al Capone's sole son, Albert Francis Sonny Capone, entered the world on December 4, 1918, before his parents were married, though a shotgun wedding likely carries a distinct meaning in mob families. Deidre Marie Capone, Al's grandniece, suggests that Al's wife May did not biologically bear Sonny, but instead raised her husband's illegitimate child. Regardless, Sonny was Al's child and was probably born with congenital syphilis. This may have been transmitted to his mother by Capone and then passed to Sonny. Consequently, Sonny was frail in his youth and suffered an ear infection that caused partial deafness. Sonny was provided for by his family, but he faced bullying due to his health issues and his father's line of work. He later studied at Notre Dame University before going back to Florida to aid his mother, May, in looking after his declining father. Once in Florida, Sonny earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Miami and married Diana Casey. The pair had 4 daughters, Veronica, Patricia, Barbara, and Teresa. Sonny and Diana eventually divorced, and he would marry twice more. Sonny's occupations included used car salesman, co-owner of a restaurant with his mother, and printer's apprentice before he became a tire distributor. There is no evidence that Sonny participated in his father's illicit dealings, although he was arrested once for shoplifting in 1965. The following year, he allegedly changed his last name to Brown. Sonny Capone passed away in 2004 at 85 years of age and was interred in California. James Vincenzo Capone made considerable efforts to distance himself from his relatives. As the eldest Capone son, James left home at 16 and journeyed across the American Midwest. He is said to have joined the circus and performed in a Wild West show where he perfected his marksmanship. According to some stories, James served in the military and was in France during World War I, but there are no official documents confirming his service. He might have used an alias, Richard James Hart, inspired by his idol, actor William S. Hart. This pseudonym endured, and another was appended. Richard James Two Gun Hart worked as a federal prohibition agent during the 1920s. His nickname derived from the 2 guns he always carried. At least it's a cooler nickname than trousers or hat. Hart lived in Homer, Nebraska, before moving with his family to the Dakotas to work as an agent for the Bureau of Indian Affairs in 1926. After the repeal of Prohibition, Hart moved back to Homer and served as marshal. But accusations of theft and hardship brought on by the Great Depression prompted Hart to reconnect with his family. Well, you know, the criminal one. Hart asked Ralph Capone for help, a request that was not without consequences. When Ralph was under investigation for tax violations in 1950 and 1951, he asked Hart to testify on his behalf, which blew his real Capone identity wide open. Hart died the following year, But before he passed away, he saw Al Capone one final time. Francesco Rafael Nito, also known as Frank Nitti, took over operations of the Chicago outfit in 1932. Another New Yorker who went to Chicago, Nitti spent time in Texas before linking up with Johnny Torrio, Al's mentor and predecessor. Nitti built his reputation as an alcohol smuggler before becoming one of Capone's most trusted men. Nitti made his way through the ranks of the Chicago outfit and served as head of operations when Capone went to prison in 1929. Upon Capone's release in March 1930, Nitti's station continued to rise, and he became known as Enforcer. After both Capone and Nitti went to prison in 1931, the latter's release in 1932 set the stage for him to take over as leader in Capone's stead. But in 1943, he came under investigation for extortion against members of Hollywood studios and unions alongside many other organized crime figures. Maybe he just wanted them to release the Snyder Cut. Fearful he would end up back in prison as a result of impending charges, Nitti left his home on March 19, 1943, and walked to the railroad tracks nearby, where he fired some drunken shots at a train before taking himself out. Paul Ricca was among the members of the Chicago mob who were indicted in the Hollywood extortion case of 1943. Born Felice de Lucia, Ricca arrived in the United States from his native Italy in 1920 under a false name. Once in the U.S., Ricca made his way to Chicago, where he briefly worked at Bella Napoli Cafe, a popular restaurant frequented by Al Capone. This is where his nickname, the Waiter, came from. Although Ricca repeatedly insisted that he was a manager, not a waiter, we understand his frustration. But when you're in Al Capone's outfit, only one guy gets to be called the manager. Capone came to trust Ricca and was even Ricca's best man when he got married in 1927. 4 years later, when Capone went to prison for tax evasion, Ricca was among the top men running the outfit, especially when Frank Nitti was also confined. Ricca also became allies with Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano, and Frank Costello, key players in the New York contingent of the National Crime Syndicate. But in 1943, Ricca was sentenced to 10 years in prison on extortion charges, though he was paroled only 4 years later in 1947. However, he could not return to the Chicago outfit due to increased police scrutiny. Tony Accardo, who had been keeping Ricca informed on outfit activities, became the nominal leader while Ricca worked behind the scenes. In 1957, the U.S. government stripped Ricca of his citizenship and attempted to deport him. Ricca stalled, only to be found guilty of tax evasion. Ricca went to prison again in 1959, but was released in 1961. He lived in the U.S. for another decade before passing away. Mary Josephine Coughlin, called May, was from a devout Irish Catholic family and purportedly met her future husband at a party or a club in New York. Those two things often overlap, so it's easy to forget. May was 2 years older than Al and worked as a timekeeper in an office, and the couple had a relatively short courtship. Their paths first crossed in early 1918, and by the end of the year, they were married. May's family was not stoked about the marriage, but by most accounts, May's pregnancy had sped up their nuptials. Al and May married after their son, Albert Sonny Francis, was born and struggled financially from the outset, due in part to the boy's poor health. Additionally, Al's mother, Teresa, and sister Mafalda did little to welcome May into the family. May was devoted to her husband and her son, but had a difficult time with the realities of Al's life in organized crime. Not everyone makes the mob wife adjustment so easily. Surveillance, notoriety, and the constant presence of Al's business associates put a strain on May. As Al's fortunes grew, May did benefit from a more extravagant way of life, but also tried to keep the truth about Al from Sonny. When Al went to prison in 1931, May was one of the few people allowed to visit him. And after Al was released due to a mental decline in 1939, May was her husband's caretaker in Florida. After Al Capone died in 1947, May stayed in Florida but was forced to sell the Palm Island home she shared with her husband in 1952. May eventually relocated to Hollywood, Florida, invested in a restaurant with Sonny, and joined forces with Al's sister, Mafalda, to sue CBS, Desilu Productions, and Westinghouse over similarities to Al's life and appearance in the Untouchables TV series. She passed away in 1986, which means she never got a chance to sue Robert De Niro over that baseball scene. So the empire fragmented. The king died in his bed, not in a hail of bullets. The family he built his fortune for scattered, carrying the weight of a name that was both a weapon and a curse. Some ran from it, others tried to control it. One even became a local hero in a small town. But the story of the Capones raises a final, unsettling question that lingers long after the guns fell silent. The montage freezes on a single evocative image, perhaps the 1952 newspaper headline of Teresa Capone's death, or a blurred, distant photo of Sonny Capone as an old man, or the Hart name on a circus poster. Was the true legacy of Al Capone ever the money, the power, or even the fear? Or was the real inheritance something far quieter and far more inescapable? A legacy written not in ledgers or headlines, but in the choices of a mother who stood by her son, a brother who poured drinks instead of bullets, and a boy who just wanted a name that was truly his own. What do you think? Was the name Capone a curse they couldn't escape, or a shadow they finally stepped out of? Let us know in the comments below.